Jerusalem church. And believers had gathered together. It needed some leadership, and Paul and Barnabas happened to be guys who were there. Their elders gathered together and were praying and fasting. And it sounds like the whole church was praying and fasting, if you look at it. And they said, set apart Paul and Barnabas for the ministry. Paul had already been told, you're going to go to the Gentiles. Now it's starting to take place. So if you just follow the narrative from Matthew 28 to Acts, there's just this constant outward push for the next places that need the gospel. So, that's how Acts starts, from Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, to the ends of the earth. Like, we have hand motions that we all taught our little kids. Like, there'd be a good memory verse if you want to have a Great Commission church. Have all of your kids memorize Acts 1:8. You will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And that's just the culture of the church, is that we're not here to create a Christian ghetto. And I mean that in the old-fashioned sense, where all the people of one nationality would just sort of hunker down together.
Compound.
What's that?
Compound of some kind.
Yeah, in New York City, ghettos weren't places for bad people. Ghettos were like where the Italians lived and the Poles lived, and these, they all lived in their little neighborhoods.
Community.
Yeah, that's not what we're doing.
We go.
Yeah, we are a ship. I'll use that analogy. We're a ship sailing, gathering, and bringing people on board on our way somewhere. So that's just a mentality that helps you think about missions, evangelism, and then of course it would take church planting. So Paul was sent out, and you'll notice when he went through Acts 13 and Acts 14, he goes and starts in the synagogues. Some of them are willing, most are not. He ends up planting churches, and then they go and establish elders. And we think the picture is complete when you have a church with elders planning the next place to plant. That's what they're actively doing. That's a mature church. They're actively thinking about the missionaries they're going to send, or the people they're going to send out. So it's always, we've been a train and send church for a long time. Most of it has been men and their families to seminary to pastor and be missionaries. Some of it has been for church planting, but I think 35 guys, and I'm one of those 35 that were grabbed and trained to be able to do something, to serve the Lord that way. So that's just the mindset of the book of Acts, and you'll just watch that. Every church is a Great Commission church. So we're not setting up a ghetto. We're not setting up our little compound. We're an embassy. We're an outpost, a fort, like all the things that are like the idea is we grow together so that we can reach the people around us in a variety of ways. So then church planting is a natural extension of that. If you read Titus, a bunch of little communities were set up on the island of Crete, and Paul sent Titus to establish the leadership of all those little communities. So and then again, a full orb church would be a church that had godly leadership with a multiplying mindset, making disciples and reaching, multiplying out. So for a long time, I like to say that we were a multiplying ministry. Like that was our, that was how we wanted to think about it for us. So that means as a church, you're always thinking about who you're giving away. And there's joy in that, there's pain in that. It's like, you want to raise your kids, and I'm a grandpa now. We would love our kids to have a house on our block. We'd love all of them and all the grandkids to grow up on our block. Like, who wouldn't love that? And at the same time, one of our sons also wanted to be a pastor, and he's in Renton. So he is a worship pastor there. So he's fulfilling that level. One son did stay, and so our hearts are okay. There's one son in town with his family and a granddaughter.
Some relief.
Yeah, some relief, and that's a joy. And he has a Great Commission mindset. He has a secular job and does a great job, but he's just like the church. That's the mindset. You train and send. So he said, I don't feel called as a pastor, but I want to make as much money as I can so I can support missionaries. And he does. So that's a significant part of their budget, and they support missionaries and church planters. And
maybe related to what you were talking about, Dan, how do we know that the church, for instance, is ready for that step? I have another question in mind, but let's take it.
So then I do think there's something important about it. If you go to the book of Titus, for instance, which is not a church planting church, it's a church finishing book where they have to establish godly leadership. So there's no church that's ready. Like, you set a whole bunch of criteria for being ready. You don't know what situations will happen. But there are some times it's not a great idea to be planting a church. Like, one is if you don't have godly, sound elders and leaders. It's not a good time to be planting a church. So if there's internal strife, all kinds of things happen. Although, one of the ways God seems to still plant churches, sometimes churches split. There's the mysterious things. That's not how we plan things. We don't plan to make it split so we can get two churches. Sometimes they happen, and you get two churches. And God's sovereign over that. But on the planning side, you would take a book like Titus, and you would say, you've got to set a church in order. And by setting a church in order, it becomes a healthy church. And the older are investing in the younger. Remember, it's always we think of it as a geographical and generational mindset. So geographically, we're looking for places that don't have the gospel. Generationally, we're looking at the next people who are coming after us. And so Titus is a great book for that. The older men training the younger men, the older women training the younger women. And they're going to set up churches. And if you watched what happened in a place like Antioch, out of it emerged this need for leadership, and a church was planted that way. Lots of different ways to plant churches. But I think that's where it's really difficult to plant a church if there are a lot of fires in the church itself. But there's always going to be the rhythm of life. There's never a time where the rhythm of life and death, think of Ecclesiastes. New child's born, somebody dies, and you rejoice and you mourn. All of life happens. And what you want to do is you want to plant churches to go reach that kind of life somewhere else too. So I think that's how we think about readiness. Then there's some really practical things to think about with planting a church. So I've experienced the church planting via split. I mean, we started at Fourth Memorial. 800 people left Fourth Memorial to plant Faith Bible Church. You wouldn't call that a great situation. Nobody's planning to do that again. But then we've been part of it in a good way. John Smith had wanted to plant a church. And in a weaker time for us, I was new into the role, and there was a lot of shakeup, but we thought the right thing to do was still send John, and John planted a church. And then in a couple of really, really healthy ways, we had international elements to our church. So we had this big influx of Slavic speakers, Russians and Ukrainians, before there was a split between Russia and Ukraine. All these Slavic speakers who had moved and who were really hungry for expository preaching and teaching and Reformed theology and wanted to plant their own churches. It was just going to be too hard for anybody over 50 to really learn enough English. So you had a sensitivity to what they needed, and they planted Christ Our Righteousness Church. And we did that in partnership with Christ Our Hope.
Is it English speaking?
It's Russian speaking.
Russian speaking.
Yeah, so a Russian speaking church. And then a bunch of Nepali immigrants came, and they're Bhutanese by ethnicity. They were kicked out of their country and they were refugees. They relocated, and a bunch of them started coming to Faith Bible Church. They started in our services, really not knowing much English. The young could learn, the older weren't. Eventually, they spun off in their own leadership, and then they meet in our building still, but they have become Milat Bible Church, trained elders, trained pastor, and they're functioning. And they'll do what every immigrant church has to do. the olders will have their language. They'll be able to disciple within their language. The youngers will be kind of two culture kids, and eventually it will get replaced by whatever their local language is.
Yeah.
That's just that always happens in every. I still have my grandfather's German Bible, right? Because there was a generation of Germans that moved here and then had German-speaking churches, and that sort of thing. So that's going to be their generation for it, and that's a joy to plant those churches. So thinking about those two churches and the training and sending and supporting, and then recently we had made plans. Our building, church was growing like here. Church is growing, you're filling up, you're filling your seats, and you're asking the question, do we add another service? Do we add more space to the building? Do we go find other space? And there's no biblically wrong answer. Like, you could do any one of those. Those are all options. And then it takes the pastoral and congregational wisdom to think about what you need to do next. Any one of those could be good. So a bunch of circumstances need to happen. We think of it really practically right now. You have to have a leadership team to go. So lots of people plant churches in a missionary style. Hayden Church in Spokane was Southern Baptist Church with a lead missionary couple. 5 families got jobs in Spokane with their lead pastor guy, and they came to Spokane to plant a church. And they started basically in a living room, and they just started talking to people until people came, and some got saved, or there were some Christians that joined them, and Haven is doing great. That is one way. It's a very expensive way, and it's a lot of risk, because what if it doesn't coalesce after a time? They're all risky in a sense. They all take faith. That's the right way to think about it. So there's that way to do it, and lots of churches are planted that way. Missionary churches, especially in foreign fields, that's all how they're done. Yeah. So that can be done here. Then the other way to think about it is what I heard it a long time ago. It's not my word. A hive model. So you hive off a section, and that's been a really common way for church history for that to happen. So First Baptist Church is downtown Coeur d'Alene, and they're too big, and they want to do something else, and so somebody establishes, and the Baptists will pick the name of a street, and they're like, such and such Baptist Church. Or if they want to do it, Second Baptist Church and Third Baptist Church, and I don't know, however, but they hive off a section, they build a building, and they establish a church in another location. Yeah. And that takes a leadership team, people to go. And it takes a location that you see could use a church, and but a bunch of those things need to come together.
And you have an example of that in your recent history with Trinity.
Trinity
you would call that the hive model?
That's the hive model. That's what we did with them. So we had a guy that really wanted to be a pastor. When we hired Paul Funches as our family ministry pastor, we knew we had him 4 or 5 years. We didn't hire him to be our forever family ministry pastor. He brought certain gifts to our family ministry that we needed, and he wanted an eldership to be behind him as he planted, and that took about 4 years to get underway. And so then he took an elder who had also finished seminary, and I think about 75 adults went with them. So their opening day was something like 100 and 125.
And how many adults were a part of Faith Bible Church?
At that time, we might have been attending, when we started the process of church planting, we might have been attending about 800. So averaging right around 800. And so another church planted out of that at the same time. Somebody from John Smith's church and other people wanted to plant. So this other community group, we knew a lot of them, they also wanted to plant, and they took some members too. So essentially we did 2 church plants, or we aided in one or gave members to one, and then officially focused on another at that time. And so we went from about 800 adults. Also COVID struck. When is a good time to plant a church?
During COVID.
During COVID. Great time. That's why, when's a good time? I don't know. How about during COVID? the God just works, and God just orchestrates the situations. So then we went from something like 800 to COVID and the 2 church plants to about 550. And the wonder of it is that we didn't need to fire any staff. Like the giving remained. Like we were wondering, how's this going to go? Are we going to need to take one of the guys who's a pastor and say, we're going to have to just shrink the pastor, the footprint of the church. And guys want to hire our guys, so they would find another church to lead. So we would have just sent a couple of guys to other churches, and they would have gone on their pastor search process. Yeah. So that would be a way to think about that.
Yeah, maybe another question related to what you were talking about, Dan, is based on your experience in church planting, can you talk to us a little bit about the dynamics between the sending church and the church that has been planting? How much involvement you as the sending church have, and can talk to us a little bit about those dynamics?
I think there's probably 3 dynamics that are potential. You want to send, you're going to give up people. And in giving up people, there are going to be some budget realities. So you have to plan ahead for budget realities. And you want people to go. And in that case, you're planning both to give them money, like we paid Paul Funchess' salary for a year, so that church didn't have to do that. We also let 75 people go, which was probably like 40 giving units, something like that. And that's another whole topic, what is a giving unit? But just imagine there's 40 families that are supporting that work. And so there's a financial side, there's a people side, and then there's a ministry side where you're preparing people to go. So you've got financial realities, people realities, and then how are we going to prepare those people to go? So the way we would recommend it, if you're going to do a hive model, is you're going to try to find your person who wants to lead the charge and go, and build a team that it has at least 2 people you'd have a plurality of elders right away. That would be ideal. And I was told by one church planting group asking how to best support a church plant. They said, what's your situation? We have 2 elders and 75 adults. And says, well, you're not church planting, you're churching. Like, they can just start as a church. Great. That's a really great way to do that. That hive model does that for you. So then the other part is, how do you backfill all of the roles that those people left? So we love to say we like to send our best, which after a while makes you feel like, so us, we who are kind of lame, unable, the schmucks stay behind and the good people go.
That's a new word to me. I don't know what is schmuck.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that
I'll
before.
explain it to you afterwards.
An
But it
encyclopedia.
is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So,
sounds good to me.
You really do want trained people to go. So they started with people who could do kids ministry, youth ministry, and other things as they saw fit to do that. When you send them, you're asking what the relationship is. Ideally, except for the money, they're an independent church. So you want to send an autonomous, independent church.
Speaking from a governance and authority
Yeah, from a governance standpoint.
yeah.
We don't really want to be their elders. We want to care for them, and we want to be available as resource. So there might be a lot of shared ministry, counseling ministry, oversight, like a lot of consulting, you might call it. We want to be a resource to them, but since we don't see the members day in and day out, it's going to be difficult for us to think about a church discipline situation or any other kind of situation. So we want that to be an independent and autonomous church. And some people will try to do other versions of that, but we don't think it's really easy. I have really, really good friends at Grace Christian Fellowship. For a little while, they were one church on 3 campuses. And
multi-site model kind of thing.
Yeah, multi-site model, and they realized we're not really shepherding each other's members. You're trying to keep a shared budget and some infrastructure that seems to help you, but it really wasn't going to work for them. So the people on the North Campus couldn't minister or shepherd the people in the Valley campus. So they all are Grace Christian Fellowships, but it's North, Central, and Valley, and they're independent and autonomous. They have a really good network of relationship, which is what we want to do. That's our relationship with Trinity, was a network of relationships. And that also lets them develop their ministry philosophy, their doctrinal emphasis that might be best, or what they're working on. So we have a relationship, but we don't have authority over them.
Yeah. Well, maybe shifting gear a little bit, Dan, from church planting to another topic, which is church revitalization.
Yeah.
And it would be helpful if you talk to us a little bit about what is the idea of church revitalization and what are the challenges. Because here at Hayden Bible Fellowship, we are open to how the Lord is going to lead. We just don't want to think, okay, this is what we want to do. If the Lord opens several doors, so how we can process and think through these things and pray about it, and what about church revitalization?
Yeah, so let's just dial back what the word revitalization means. It means putting new life into it.
Yeah.
So a church would have many reasons to need new life. One is their pastor could be retiring. Another is, I can think of a situation where there are such difficult family situations for the elder team, they can barely elder. Like you can imagine aging, or you could imagine illnesses, and they're just not able to shepherd their flock. You could imagine an aging congregation. You can imagine a congregation that's lost its vision to do anything but open its doors and plunk out some songs and imagine the glory days of years gone by. Like those are things that all need new life. So anytime you train and send a pastor to another church, it is a kind of revitalization. So we've done train and send for years. We just thought it was a church needs a pastor. Revitalization. They need a pastor. Sometimes you encourage a couple of families to go with the pastor, depending on where they are. But a church revitalization in the modern sense is you have a really beleaguered, aging congregation with a building and perhaps an aging building, and they're just not able to pay the bills anymore. One of the situations, about the same time I started in ministry, Carrie Hughes started as an associate pastor and helped them plant Christ the Redeemer Church. They ended up meeting at, I think they got the afternoon or the secondary service, and this old American Baptist congregation was just not able to pay its bills anymore. It was very few people were there. The woman who was a pastor there was tired, and she was ready to, and so somehow the connections got made through some business connections, and she said, you guys should just use the afternoon, use the building in the afternoon. And eventually she said, I'm just ready to be done. And almost miraculously, this liberal American Baptist congregation said, we're just going to come under your authority to this Bible teaching, solidly evangelical and Reformed church.
So what has happened in that case then is you've not only had a new gospel witness through Carrie Hughes, but you've removed a bad gospel witness simultaneously.
Yeah, it was, yes, you can't explain how God's going to do things like that.
Yeah.
And they weren't expecting it. They were just glad to have the afternoon service. And Carrie was the youth pastor, not ready to be a senior pastor, and he brings in a friend, and they co-pastor together for quite a while, and eventually he moves back to his home country, and that worked out well. So that's a revitalization. So right now, we're thinking about church planting in the next 5 years, because we kind of look at the number 800 as a number to say our church gets really uncomfortable. Like the size of our church is starting to get uncomfortable. Limited parking. It's hard to get everybody into the other parts of the building besides the sanctuary or the auditorium. And when you can't park, people think, I don't know if I really want to. Like it starts to become self-defeating. Either you add another service because your infrastructure is there, and you kind of spread out the congregation, and that's fine. You can do that. So we think of that as a target, and we're averaging just about 700 right now. You know, from that 550 now to 700, and thinking, well, I don't know how long that's going to take before we're ready. So we're looking for a man who wants to go, a leadership team, and building a team to go. Everybody is on the train and send model. We're going to try to. All our pastors and all our elders are saying we're training somebody to go, maybe who could help in college ministry, somebody to go who could help in children's ministry. So that mindset's happening. But we're also looking, because maybe a building comes open just like this other one, and we're just open-handed. I had Corey Milliken, who's staying with us. He's a pastor in California. We trained and sent him. He says, you know what I'd love to do, Dan? I would love to, someday when you're old enough, you retire, I could take the senior pastorate of that building. We both picked a building, and you could be my elder. I'm like, that sounds like a dream come true. Sounds like a dream come true. From your mouth to God's ears. That pastor in that church does not know that plan yet.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
It's okay to dream.
yeah, yeah. So we're open to that idea, because what you're looking for is where's the next place, and who's the next generation. So where's the next place? Who's the next generation? Where does there need to be a witness? And I have said this for 20 years. If you bought a segment of our property and planted a church on it right next door to us, I would welcome that. We would sell it to them as long as it was sound, within reason. I would welcome that, because we can't reach the 40,000 people in our neighborhood. We're a commuter church. We drive by everybody there. If somebody wanted to plant a church pulling from the neighborhood, that would be fantastic. We can't do it. There are a lot of churches, but there's not a church on every corner, and there's not a church on every corner that's reaching their neighbors, coworkers, and friends. Yeah. This is the era of the ghettoizing of the church. People are fleeing from oppressive places and finding friends, and like it's a risky time, because we're just so tired of being beleaguered that I think in an outreach mindset, boy, we have to really work at thinking about how to reach the next generation, not just in our church, but outside our church too.
Yeah.
Because the natural inclination is to think about our own tribe, our own family. That's the human inclination.
Yeah, and there's a reason why you want your family to be really healthy. Like if you don't have a healthy family and you try to do evangelism, like they're just coming into a mess. So there's an important reason to have a healthy family. Just when is the dial too much to all focus on a healthy family, church family, and all focus on outreach? Like it's, you just have to sense where is the energy going. But a really healthy church family just draws people by itself, because somebody who had a marriage crisis has a friend who had a marriage crisis, and the gospel changed them. And all of a sudden they're like, well, can I get what you have? Our number one evangelism outreach is our counseling center, because people think they got help and their world's changed. Can I get help? So it's not an either or, but I think a healthy family is important, but also just making sure that you're thinking where's the next place? Where's the next generation? Yeah.
So speaking of church planting versus church revitalization, when it comes to church planting and you're sending a couple of leaders, they have their philosophy of ministry, they know what they're doing, they're starting it from scratch. But when it comes to church revitalization, you go to a foundation that has already been established. And what do you do if this is very bad theology? What is the wisdom? What is your counsel to someone who is going to a church revitalization? How they can start from scratch in that already existing foundation?
I think it was Mike McKinley wrote a book, Church Planting is for Cowards.
Wimps is the word.
What's that?
Wimps is the title. Church planting is for wimps.
Oh, for wimps. Thank you. That's the correct title. Church planting is for wimps. Because church revitalizations are so much harder.
Yes.
Like when you plant a church, you get to decide. You finally get free. You have been wanting certain things in the church your whole life. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't happening at the mother church. And then they let you plant a church. And you get to do it. You get to design the ideal church. And it happens every time. And then you just create, another generation after them. It's like, I can't wait to start my own church because this church has got all these things.
Like parents and kids, right?
Might be like parents and kids. I'll tell you how I do it. But the revitalization has those things to work out. And they're real. So revitalizations usually, not always, but are usually slower. Because that church doesn't want to give up what they feel like are their doctrinal convictions. So are the doctrinal convictions in alignment? Which would always be the best way. Your foundation has to be your doctrinal convictions. Are they in alignment? And then are they willing to have the philosophy of ministry wed together? Are they willing to do the hard work? And initially, a church that needs revitalization says, we just want some kids. There's no kids running around. So they say something really profound like, he's a young pastor. He's got kids. Here's going to be this young family, and because he's got kids, people with kids are going to show up. I mean, they're really thinking it through. But, it's really practical. Like, they would love to see some kids. So you're a guy and you have kids, that must mean we should revitalize. Like, maybe there's more to it than that. Because then, and we've seen this happen over and over, there's always bumps. Because the idea of having a church, people fill the room and having kids and a sense that there's going to be a future here is really good until the kids run around your walker and are not in control, or pretty soon, so many new people are here that the old stalwarts are feeling like we're just being pushed out. Like it's all about them and what about me? And so there's got to be just a ton of sensitivity in a revitalization that these are people who have given their lives to the church. They know all the stories and all the rooms of everything that's happened, and they're longing for the good old days, thinking that maybe this revitalization, and a lot of times they just don't happen because somebody somewhere is like, I can't do that. So often in that case, there needs to be a conversation about if there's new elders coming in, you're going to agree to submit to the new elders. So can you submit? So
submission is an essential element.
Can you gladly defer to the leadership of the new pastors and the elders? Can you work that out? So those usually have some bumps. There's usually some shakeup. And that's true in a church plant too. 75 people go to the church plant. They all think, finally, we're going to have church like we like. And they get there and it's not what they like. And they're back here. They're off to somewhere else because it just didn't turn out like they hoped. And you survive those bumps by forging a unified vision and under a unified doctrinal statement. And eventually that settles out. And those people have agreed to a church life together. The American Baptist Church, the gal who was the pastor retired and sat in the second row in a complementarian church. Like it was like, she didn't fight it. So sometimes that happens. That's why the church planting is for wimps, because like it's often a lot harder to do that. But so many situations happen. Like you should be ready, because you would hope that the American Baptist Church, its lampstand has been out for decades, or the United Methodist Church, its lampstand has been out for decades, and you would love a lampstand in a building, and that's what Christ Our Hope has. They have a Methodist church, that folded. The denomination could no longer carry the weight of of heating and lighting and all of that stuff, and so they sold off the church. So you'd love an old Methodist building or an old American Baptist building or an old Baptist building. I've heard of an old Mormon offshoot that was sizable and functional.
I would assume that's not because they can't afford it. They've just abandoned it for another reason. Maybe
Yeah. For a variety of reasons, a building comes available, or there's, like in that one, there's people that are meeting there. You can have the afternoon. We're going to take the morning. So there might be reasons why they work out. And I think it's also really helpful. William Taylor at St. Helens at Bishopsgate in the financial district of London, right under the Gherkin, the pickle building in London, if you've ever seen the landscape there. It's literally right under that building. It's 500 years old, and it's historic. And he said, just remember that a church building is really just a rain shelter, because the church is actually the community. But I mean, it's nice to have a rain shelter that's clean and dry and functional. And it would be really nice if it was pretty. Mm-hmm. We might like that too. So there's a lot of beautiful old buildings that are, getting new life with new congregations in them.
Yeah. When it comes to, so you're talking church revitalization or starting from fresh, you're talking about a hive model, you're talking about all these different models or patterns. I think we're getting the thread here that there's not one formula.
There's not one formula
for planting, but in every case you have at least some people going, right? Whether it's the leaders, whether it's the leaders with a bunch of families. For the people in our church, our members, how might you counsel them to think through that eventual decision? Right? Whether should they stay, should they support here and remain here and fill the vacuums here? Are there certain principles that you would point them to as they're thinking through those things in the coming months?
So what we did I'll just tell you the story, and you could think about how that turns into principles. Paul wanted to go to the valley. We had a bunch of people in the valley. And the people in the valley were saying, we're reaching our coworkers, but Faith Bible Church is 35 minutes away. Come with me to my church that's 35 minutes away. And they're like, yeah, not really. So there were a set of people that wanted to be in the new location. So they have the want to and the ministry mindset to go. So we match Paul up with the people who want to go and want to be ministering. Then the second factor is the core of that. Because you might think in terms, it's real practical terms. You have the crowd, the committed, and the core. It's just an old language about how people are in church. And the crowd are the people who occasionally attend. And the committed are the people who are members and are there. And the core is the people who are always willing to bear the load of mutual shepherding. They're your most mature. They're at every event making it happen, and that's their joy. You want some core people to go and be right alongside the pastor, however big that core team is. So that team, in Paul's case, started to meet a year and a half to 2 years before they planted. And so that core team was probably about 20 people, and it had potential deacons, potential elders, people in the business community who understood how to find buildings. Like that core were some talented, gifted by God, talented to help form things, and they forged their doctrinal convictions and their philosophy convictions together. And
as they were attending faith, so they're
attending faith.
Yes, okay.
And then and that started with a once a month meeting. It eventually moved to a once a week meeting. And then when they were a certain distance out, something like 9 months, they said, we want to now recruit people. And this is not an in-secret thing. We've been talking about it. Everybody knows about it. A bunch of people are already having conversations. And then we had one set of conversations. What about in the crowd, people who say, we want to go? We actually discouraged some people from going, because they weren't mature. Your marriage is barely surviving. and you're barely able to parent your kids. I know it sounds exciting to be part of a church plant, but what you really need is discipleship. And what they really need is to not have to spend all that time taking care of your really intense needs. So there was some wisdom about that, and nothing's absolute. So then there was a negotiation phase where we would tell Paul, who do we need to have a hard conversation with? Probably not your time to go. It's probably not that.
These conversations are, you and Paul are both involved in these conversations?
Yeah, us and some
other elders?
Paul and the elders.
All the elders are involved?
Yeah,
one way or
would
the
be
other?
involved in those kind of conversations.
This is just part of the shepherding care, really.
It's the shepherding care. Like, what's the best shepherding for that couple?
Right.
The best shepherding for that couple is to actually stay with us and get healthy, and then go join when they're healthy. But we need you to be in a healthy place. And none of that's absolute, but it's generally how we thought about that. There were some situations where we said, you're really vital to this ministry here, and we're giving away 2 other counterparts to you. We might like to keep you. Although, again, those are all individualized situations. But normally, we just said, if you're praying and you're sensing God leading you, go, it's okay. We'll figure out what to do here. So we would normally let mature people go. But we did think of it as we want them to have the best chance to start well as they can. So give them a healthy core who are able to shepherd and care for people, who already care about the lost in their areas. A lot of people join a church plant because they're not very good evangelists, and they think church planting is just going to bring non-Christians into the doors, and they don't have to work at evangelism. So they're going to go as non-evangelists to a church plant and not evangelize. So that actually won't work. Yeah. You've got to have people who are reaching people to go in a church plant. If the goal of your church plant is to not just reestablish Hayden Bible Fellowship somewhere else. If you want to actually reach people, that's the purpose of a church plant. You send a solid set of people out to do that.
I'm hearing a couple principles, at least. You mentioned geography, right, is a major part of it. You
Yeah.
live in that neighborhood, you work in
Yeah.
that neighborhood, you evangelize in that neighborhood, and now you've got a like-minded church in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're mentioning a principle when it comes to your individual spiritual maturity,
Yeah.
right, whether that will be a help or an
Right.
asset versus a liability
Right.
to the plan. So
A lot of wisdom and
a lot of
prayer.
wisdom in that. I mean, there's no formula even for those things.
No.
So a lot of wisdom required.
At the end of the day, we're never going to say to somebody, you have to stay at our church and you can't go to another church.
I don't know how you would stop them.
Right.
Yeah.
It's America.
Yeah, it's America. It's Idaho. Yeah,
Yes, it is.
yeah.
Yeah, well, we're getting closer to 10 a.m. Actually, we're 1 minute away from 10 a.m. But we want to open just some for questions.
Yeah.
Maybe we can take a couple of questions before we conclude our time. Just we all take 2 questions. Who's the first?
Yes,
Seth.
Seth.
Yeah,
Should you go? I don't know.
quick, easy. No. One of the things we've been talking about, and so I'm curious because of Christ Our Hope, if you could explain some of the thinking behind why and when would you plant really close nearby?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
So
we've done
again,
that with Rathburn, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene. You know,
Right.
why you're doing this if it's a 10, 15-minute commute? Can you
Yeah.
explain how you guys thought through that with Christ Our Hope?
Yeah, so there's some gaps in that story that you should know about. They wanted to plant in the valley. So they went and they found a school to meet in, or there was a meeting venue, and then they went to a school, and they door knocked every door in every neighborhood for 5 years, getting very little. I mean, they were really, they beat the pavement to go to every place, started every kind of evangelistic outreach ministry, and there just wasn't an interest. And like, God's got to create an interest. Some businessman gives them a call and says, the Methodist Church on Monroe is for sale. Would you like a building? And they checked it out, they looked at it, and then John Smith called me and said, we're 7 minutes from Faith Bible Church that sent us. Is this okay? It had already been 10 years So they're already their own congregation. And John, this is zero problem. We are not in a competition with you. So if some of our people pop over to you, great. If some come back to us, great. Like that, and we work out all those trades. So we'll give you one, you give us two. How valuable are they? You know, what's that? We have all those shepherding conversations. So we weren't initially looking for that. However, today, let's just say today that First Free Church, it's a Free Methodist church, at the top of the hill, 3 minutes from us, came open. We might really think about something and kind of work through that process. Indian Trail Church, and one of our guys, Aaron Badley, went up to Indian Trail for an internship, and then a church in north central Spokane said, we can't pay our bills anymore. Do you want the building? And they gave it to Indian Trail Church. Do we have a guy? Well, he took 45 adults and went to that church. And it's a clear overlap for us and them. Some of our members went. Great, it's another lighthouse. There are so many people to reach in Spokane that you could plant 5 minutes away.
You're not going to run out of unbelievers there.
We're not going to run out of unbelievers in Spokane. You might in Idaho.
We still have a ways to go, believe it or not.
Yeah. So that's where location is a consideration, but it's not the only consideration. Yeah.
One more question? Others? Well, Dan, how can we be praying for you and your family and Faith Bible Church as we close?
I think for me, the train and send has been an incredible joy and sorrow too. We didn't talk about a really good analogy for church planting. It's like giving away an organ. It takes a while to grow them back. So there's the painful side, because you love people and you've wed your life together to them. But I think for me, if we lose our first love, then all of the stuff can just evaporate. Like you'll lose your lampstand if you don't have your first love. So there's nothing more important than cultivating our first love, viewing afresh day by day the mercies of God and the gospel. So you need to pray for Linda and I, like anybody else, that strategy and planning and training and sending doesn't become a machine. Like we just love Jesus and we need him. And if we love Jesus and we need him, he will work out the details. And he will work in circumstances above and beyond what we could ask or think. So I think that's true for everybody, but you kind of forget, well, we have our doctrine, like, what we never want to say, like we slap anybody who says it. We're the only Bible church in Spokane. We've got it going on. Well, that is the way to lose your lampstand. I've watched it happen over and over. So you want to really be cautious. We want to love Jesus, and we need him to help us do that. And we want to make sure that that's the fabric of the life of the church. And then intentionality after that. We just pray that we would be intentional. I've learned a lot. I've made a lot of mistakes. And so I'm able to help either avoid some. The ones I make now are smaller, Lord willing. And then to just be intentional and wise about what's next for us.
Well, Dan, thank you for spending the last couple of days with us. And
it's been just a joy for me.
We look forward to the upcoming service here at 10:30 where you'll be preaching the word. And for now, let's go ahead and close together in prayer, and we'll pray for all these things.
Great.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness to us, for your goodness to us individually, as individual believers and families. We thank you for your goodness to us corporately, for your faithfulness to Faith Bible Church, for your faithfulness to Hayden Bible Fellowship. We do pray for Dan and the other elders and all of Faith Bible Church as they continue to want to be faithful to your great commission, to be a light and salt to the world around them in the Spokane region and even beyond that. We ask that you would kindle in them renewed vigor and zeal for the gospel and for the lost, and ultimately for your glory to be made known among the nations, starting here in our area in the Northwest. We ask that you would preserve and protect the many marriages and families and ministries there at that church. And we pray for Dan and Linda, even specifically in their marriage, and even after all this time, that they would love one another more and more, serve one another. And we thank you for the help that they have been to our church and the friendship that we enjoy and the partnership for the gospel that we see now even here this morning. We ask that you would help both of our churches to be active in this work. We know that there is much work ahead, but we know that you love people. You love these unbelievers more than we ever could, and we ask that you would accomplish that work in your timing and in your way and in your methods. We pray these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.